Before we get started with today's interview, just a quick reminder, click the thumbs up, make sure you subscribe, and ding the bell so that you don't miss any of the great interviews that we have coming up. Now, on to today's interview. Welcome back, everybody. I'm really excited to introduce my special guest today, Christopher Goldston, awesome, wonderful, renowned composer. Christopher, welcome. Thank you so much for taking time to meet with us today.
And thanks for letting me share with you.
You have so many wonderful pieces on the Federation list this year that we had to make sure we spoke with you. And I'm delighted to see that some of your mom's compositions were included as well. So that, I think, makes it really, really special. But I'd like to start asking you a little bit about your background musically. And one of the questions I've asked many composers I've talked to so far is, do you come from a musical family? But of course, I don't think I really need to ask that question because I grew up playing your mom's compositions and they've been on the Federation list and I've enjoyed teaching them for so many years. Tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up in a house with a wonderful, well-loved composer.
When I was growing up, my mom was just a piano teacher at that point. It wasn't until probably I was 10 or later that she started composing, because she didn't start composing until she was 50. And she died when she was 70. So all the works that you know from her are within that short 20-year period. And all of the new things that are on the Federation list are pieces that were not published while she was alive that I have been publishing, finding in her old manuscripts and publishing most recently. So they're not old works, they're new works. But I do remember, coming home from school and doing my homework on the couch while she would teach piano students. We had eventually had a second piano in another part of the house so that I could practice some while she was teaching. So that was very helpful. But even she came from a musical family because her great-grandfather owned a piano store on Bourbon Street in New Orleans and was director of the Shriners Band, and we still have his cornet that's engraved with his name.
That is awesome. So there's a long musical legacy here. What a cool thing. How about you? When did you start composing?
I started composing really when I was in college, and it's partially because of the Federation. When I was in high school and when my mom was starting to compose, she would ask the families for their feedback on her compositions. And we would all vote on which parts we liked best and things like that. And my mom had always said that I had such great ideas that perhaps I should try composing myself. So I think I was maybe a sophomore in college. It was the first year that the Federation had the Lynn Freeman Olson Composition Awards. And my parents encouraged me to write something and enter that. That's for writing a pedagogical piece. And I was the national collegiate winner. I was the first winner of that. The Federation was always great to my mom, and it was great to me because that's how I got started with the Lynn Freeman Olson Composition Award.
That is awesome. I had no idea. And what a cool thing that it has been this symbiotic relationship between you and the National Federation of Music Clubs all these years. That is just such a cool success story that you got your start through a Federation composition contest, and now you have turned this into a career as a composer. Oh, that is wonderful. I love that. This question probably also is somewhat obvious, but who are the people who nurtured you as a composer and really helped you to become a better composer?
Definitely Mom, because she just wrote some really great arrangements, some really great original music, and she really relied on using patterns in her music and things. She prided her music on sounding harder than it actually was. So pieces that were accessible and easy to play, but sounded impressive or sounded lyrical or what have you. And so that was something that she really worked hard on. And she always said that if you play a piece that you're writing and you stumble yourself on a section, then you probably need to rewrite that section because other people will too. I think just learning about how to compose, how to use patterns, how to write so that the music really falls naturally under your fingers is something that I really learned from her. And I also had some great teachers in college and grad school as well. Uh, Going to North Carolina, Greensboro for college and Northwestern for grad school. And I've had some great editors along the way as well. And so I've just been very lucky with all that.
Let me ask you this. Who inspires you as a composer today?
There are many composers that I use their own music, and I enjoy even reaching out to them. Someone who actually really helped me get into my own self-publishing was Carol Watts, because I really consulted with her a lot about how to get started in self-publishing. After I started with Alfred, I was with Alfred for a few years and then back to FJH. At FJH, there was Kevin Olson, and people like that. So I still use his sonatinas. There are many great pedagogical composers. I think that really something that I have really tried to do with my own self-publishing that I think is really important is that there are so many people self-publishing now that I have an editor that I'm using just to make sure everything looks great and professional, because I don't want it to only be notes and rhythm. Students need help with phrasing, articulation, tempo marks, all of the dynamics, fingering suggestions. If a composition doesn't have all that, then it's not as accessible for the student. And I've really tried very hard to make sure that I have all those elements in my own self-published works.
I really enjoyed playing through your pieces, and it struck me immediately as I opened them up and saw how beautifully they were laid out and how accessible they appear on the page. They're spaced beautifully. They look accessible. It looks like something that isn't intimidating to me as a pianist. And so I think you've done a really wonderful job.
Right. And, it's not only just making sure that all the elements are there, fingering and dynamics and phrasing, articulations, tempo, all of that, but simple things as where is the page turn? Those are important things. And if someone is not experienced with editing their own music, then you could be turning a page in a really awkward place. And so things, even just the pagination of everything makes a huge difference.
Another question I have for you is that your compositions are really varied. There's a really wonderful breadth and depth in your compositions, but they all have this sort of unique sound to them. What are the things that you did in your compositional journey to help you find your unique sound and develop your unique style?
I think it's just the music that I grew up listening to, that my mom played in the house and that I also had experience with, which it probably influences the harmonies or rhythms that I might use a little bit. At home, we really listened to classical music almost entirely, but it wasn't, Beethoven and Mozart for the most part. It was Shostakovich and Bartok, and listening to Scheherazade and the planets and all these wonderful pieces. And so I think that just being exposed to, pieces of the 20th century that had such great harmonies and rhythms and everything really influenced the language that I probably use today.
Oh, that's a wonderful answer. I love how you've drawn from all of those influences sort of organically. I think that's really cool. Where do you seek inspiration for your compositions?
I am very goal-oriented, so I definitely have various things that I would like to compose for certain uses and such as that. But I also think about what would be good for students, what would be good for my students, also just trying to have a variety of music and styles and types of music. One thing that I remember that my mom had said to me was make sure that I don't always write only one level, one style, because then you're always competing with yourself. And she said, make sure to write pieces that are a variety of styles, variety of levels, even duets or one-hand music, all of it, so that, because if you're only writing late elementary music and they're all piano solos and they're all lyrical, then you're your worst competitor or your best competitor.
That makes a lot of sense. I love that. Very cool. What are some attributes that you feel help people to become successful composers? You mentioned a moment ago that you're very goal-oriented. What are some other attributes that you feel really help people to become successful as composers?
Obviously, an attention to detail is really great. And then also just exposure to a lot of music, a lot of pedagogical music, so that you're writing things that do fall easily under the hands and all of that. But also just really understanding form and how to uh, work with motives and all of that, just so that the music makes sense and it's logical and memorable.
Talk to me a little bit about the role that restrictions play in your own composing.
That's an interesting question, but I mean, pedagogical composers, we all do keep in mind the student and the level and what they have, what concepts they've been introduced to, and what we can use and what we can't use, and all of that. Um, and but I think that's really helpful because that it's not so much a challenge, but it just forces you to think in a certain way of what can I do for the student and how can I write a piece that's going to work well for them.
That is excellent. How do you get students started when they're first beginning composing?
Usually they have already started something themselves. And so, we might listen to some of the sketches that they have or the pieces that they have. A lot of times, if they have a piece, they're not willing to change it. So it's good to just listen to the piece and maybe make some slight suggestions, but then leave it. I see my role as a composition teacher, especially for younger students. They come in with a lot of ideas, or maybe it could even be rambling, or they might not have enough. So I kind of assume the same role that an English teacher does with how to write an essay or write a story. So I take all those elements and say, oh, I really like this one. Let's develop this one. This one doesn't really work well in this piece. Why don't we save this idea for a different piece? And then, you can just say, oh, why don't we put this part here and this part here? So you're still using all of their ideas, but you're just helping them with form and phrase length and all of that. So that's one of the best things that you can do with young students.
How do you, as a composer, avoid some of the common pitfalls which befall many composers, starting a lot of things and never finishing them, or getting stuck halfway through, or having trouble getting past that blank page syndrome?
I think I always have some ideas, and my phone is full of short voice memos of things that I've played, and also my computer for Zoom as well, where I have just turned on Zoom and started recording myself playing something, and then I can go back and revisit those. So I have a lot of starts that I could certainly go back and finish. And then also, I have all these old manuscript books of my mom's that I am slowly going through that, I have to go through, look at these sketches, see if there are pieces that actually were completed at some point, if they were published, if they weren't published. And if not, is it something that I might want to use as my own start? That's one way that my mom actually got me started composing, is she would give me a starting measure or two starting measures or an accompaniment pattern or something like that. So I feel like I have an endless supply of starts that I need to finish.
What advice do you have for young composers, young aspiring composers who are hoping to emulate your success as a pedagogical composer?
Just study as much music as you can and study a lot of pedagogical music. Ask colleagues and teachers to critique your music and give suggestions and be open to those suggestions. Those are really two of the most important things that you could do, is just being exposed to a ton of music. And then also just getting feedback from others. Perhaps even, testing out your pieces on students as well, because then if they're going to be successful playing them.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you feel composers are facing today?
The publishing world has really changed a lot in, I don't know, at least since my mom had passed. And I know that even from when she started composing to the time that she died, there was a lot of change in the publishing world and composition world. Just figuring out those changes is a huge step. And, I have decided that self-publishing is something that I would like to pursue, and I'm doing my best to give a go at this. But working with the editor has been helpful. Getting grant money to help pay for expenses is helpful, because otherwise, it would not be financially feasible to do this on my own. So there are pros and cons to all of it. But it's all a challenge. You just have to figure out which challenge you're going to accept.
Thank you so much for sharing your time and all of your insights today. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed sharing all this information with you.